You're gonna do Stacy and Stella.
Okay.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to our Thursday night review. I know it's been a little while. It's been roughly 2 weeks, I believe, since we did this, and I'm gonna start this off just a little bit different and kind of give an explanation as to what's been going on, so I can kind of get you guys filled in as to what happened. So, a couple weeks ago, I had some mental health issues going on with my BPD, and with the time at work, it being very stressful and stuff like that, I kind of got to the point where I just kind of overshot it a little bit. And what happened was that it made me feel uncomfortable. It made me feel like I need to take a break. I need to step back. I need to, get my own stuff situated. And there's a lot of other stuff, going on with like my custody situation and stuff like that, visitation being chipped away. So it really just all came to a head at that point, and I just needed to take time off, get some FMLA time off, and really recoup so I can give you guys the best show possible. And I wanted to be able to, do the lives and stuff like that while I was recuperating, but I found each day for a while during the 2 weeks that I was out, I was dealing with different things. So it was just easier just to take a break, mentally and everything like that. So that way we can get back to it stronger than ever and come into 2024, on a positive vibe rather than, a negative one. So with that being said, I have Stormy here with me.
Hey, everyone.
And we're going to get back to where we left off. If you remember in the last chapter, those who haven't followed along with us, just to reintroduce myself, I'm indie author Nick Belisi, and we're going over Paradise Reborn. We have been reading through it and giving you guys different Easter eggs and stuff like that from the book. So tonight we're just going to pick up where we left off with that. In the last chapter, we read about how Gwen went with Betty to the mental health ward of the Reedsville Medical Center, and they wound up breaking Stella out. And then Stella and Gwen do their trek through the woods, and they don't know where they're going, but they make a pit stop basically at Stella's old house, so she starts to remember a little bit, that this is from her dreams and stuff. So at that point, Gwen doesn't have anywhere to take her because she's not from Reedsville anymore. So she winds up taking her to Stacy's house, and then they have a little bit of dialogue and stuff like that before inevitably Stacy comes barreling into the house, and she has to hide Stella in the closet. So that's where we left off, and we're going to jump back into it. Tonight, Stormy's going to be playing Stella and also Stacy like she's been doing. I'm going to be doing the narrator and Gwen, and I will also be doing Pete. So, this chapter name, it's chapter 9, and the name is El Mio Tesoro. Okay. So, I slowly inched back towards the closet door and opened it. Stella began to emerge from behind the doors, which prompted the anger in Stacy to reach an all-time high. I knew Stacy didn't want to be involved, and now I put her in a horrible predicament. Stacy, balling her fist, approached me and spoke.
Dude, you gotta be fucking kidding me. Why is this chick in my house, Gwen?
I had no other options. When Betty picked me up, she really didn't have a plan in place, and I didn't want to get arrested. Everything just happened so fast.
You need to get her the hell out of here and stop this bullshit.
Where am I going to take her, Stacy? You said yourself that the cops are looking for her everywhere.
I don't give a shit where you take her, but get her out of here.
Stacy, try to rationalize for a second. If I take her outside, we'll both surely get caught. I just need a little more time to get this sorted out. I know I dropped a huge problem in your lap, but I had no other choice.
You did have a choice, and a pretty easy one at that. You should have simply listened to me and not got involved. You realize if I don't call this in, you're making me an accessory to this.
Just relax, Stacy. I'll get this all sorted out. Nothing's going to happen to you. Stacy began to pace the room, breathing heavy in what seemed to be some sort of a coping mechanism to try to relax. The sight before me and the predicament I was in made my anxiety skyrocket, so I could only imagine what she must be feeling right now. I walked behind Stacy and placed my arms around her, interlocked at her waist. She completely stopped moving, and I rested my head on her shoulder and said, "Please just calm down. I'm going to get this sorted out right now, and everything's going to be okay." Stacy slowly turned around to look at me. Her face was as red as a tomato, and I could tell she wasn't taking this well at all. Panting heavy and focusing on her breathing, she reached into her pocket to pull out her phone. I could see she was scrolling through it for a number, and as she was coming up on Betty's name, she hit the dial button. I grabbed the phone from her hand and quickly hung it up.
Dude, what the fuck did you do that for?
You can't call Betty right now. The cops are probably watching her phone and hoping that Stella's going to call her.
God, Gwen, you're killing me right now. If you were anybody else, I would have just thrown your ass out. Why don't I just go to a hotel or something? Don't say anything right now. Your ass shouldn't even be here. And why the fuck are you wearing my clothes?
Stacy, none of this is helping right now. I gave her some clothes because she was in pajamas and they got ruined on the walk over here. Just sit on the bed and relax.
Where's the vodka? I need a drink right now.
It's right over by the bed. Let's just all take a drink and calm down.
This chick doesn't need a drink. She's fucked up enough. You don't even know me. So what's your problem with me? Well, where to start? Firstly, I've had some whack job in my house that is wanted by the police from escaping from the loony bin. A girl, I might add, that was put there because she tried to kill her therapist. So excuse me if I'm not as welcoming as you might have hoped for. I tried to kill someone? Yes, hello? Do you not remember why your arms are covered in scars?
Stacy, now's not the time or place for this. Just calm down and let me think for a second. Stella stared down, looking over the massive cuts on her forearms, seemingly trying to remember how they got here. Stacy sat over on her bed and picked up my vodka, taking a few swigs from it with no chaser. When she pulled the bottle from her lips, I sat down next to her and grabbed the bottle for myself. I tipped the bottle back and had a few large gulps. Stacy reached into her pocket and pulled out her pack of cigarettes. She rose from the bed and walked over to the computer desk and cracked the window beside it. As she seated herself on the desk, she didn't take her eyes off of Stella even for a second, while we lit the cigarette and took a long drag from it. Stacy threw the pack in the lighter on her bed and then blew the smoke out the window. I thought to myself, maybe the cigarette will calm her down a little bit, but you could tell by the way she was staring at Stella that she was very weary of her being around us. So I said, Stella, why don't you come and sit down?
No, she is good right where she is. I got my eyes on you, bitch. So don't try to pull some shit.
Stacy, lighten up. I've been with her for a while now, and she's not a bad person.
No, Gwen, you're naive. You like to think everyone is good when some people just aren't. You explain to me how you feel safe around someone who was committed for attempted murder. You haven't even seen the stuff I have. These types of people are the first to take advantage of you the second your back is turned. You better not try to pull anything because I'll put your ass in the ground. I don't know what you're talking about. You think I want to be here right now? You think I want to stand here and take this from you?
Stacy, standing up from her desk with her fist balled and a cigarette hanging from her lips, said,
I'm right here, bitch, if you want to take a shot.
The tension in the room was at an all-time high, and I needed to resolve this conflict immediately. I got up from the bed, standing in between the two of them, and yelled, Listen, enough of this shit, Stacy. Smoke your cigarette and chill the fuck out. Stella, you just stand there and let me deal with this. The both of you are acting like assholes. Just quit it. I'm not letting the two of you fight about this. This is my fault, and you both should be mad at me. I looked over... whoops. I slowly started to nudge Stacy back to her computer desk while her eyes stayed pinned on Stella. I reached up and took the cigarette from Stacy and began smoking it myself. There had to be something I could do quick to get the tension in this room to subside, and I just wish Stacy would calm down because it would make it so much easier to deal with. I started pacing the room, thinking of a way I can get us all out of it. And that's when I had an idea. Okay, listen. I think the best idea right now is to drive us into town and get a hotel room where she could stay. We can have her hide in the back seat so no peering eyes can spot her. Then, once we get her settled, I'll stay with her until Betty contacts us. Should Betty come looking for her or call, just give her the room number where we are, and she will find us.
How do you plan to get there, Gwen?
Well, if you could drop us off, then we would be out of your hair.
You don't think the cops will be looking at the footage of the hotel cameras looking for this girl and then see me drop her off there?
Okay, then drop us off at the general store. We'll park and we'll go in and get some food, and I'll have Pete take us over. I know he'll be fine with it.
How do you know that? Why would anyone want to get involved with this shit show?
Stacy, we don't have many options, so please just stop making this harder than it needs to be. Before you go on with this, and I told you stuff, just save it for later.
Fine, then let's get going. I want this shit out of my house now. What do I do for shoes?
Stacy, can she please borrow a pair of shoes?
Great. And now I'm a fucking clothing store. There should be a pair of old sneakers in the closet you were hiding in. Take those.
Stella turned around and grabbed some old black and white Converse sneakers and started to put them on. Thank you, Stacy. I'll grab my stuff and we'll all get out of here.
Dude, don't thank me. Those are your old sneakers from before you left.
I looked over at the sneakers and sure enough, they were my black and white Converse sneakers that I used to doodle on. Luckily, they seemed to fit Stella enough for us to move out. I gathered my stuff as Stacy collected her cigarettes and lighter and we all headed out of the bedroom. As I walked down the stairs with Stella in front of me and Stacy behind me, I thought to myself it was probably best just to stay between them. Stella reached the front door and I quickly got out front with her to see if to take a look outside and see if there was any cops patrolling the neighborhood. Once I thought we were in the clear, I waved on to them to follow me. As we walked outside and Stacy shut the door behind her, I walked to the front of the passenger door and Stella getting in the back seat behind me. Stacy got to the driver's side and unlocked it so we could all get in. Once we were all seated in the car, I could see Stacy adjusting her rearview mirror in order to keep Stella clearly in her vision from the back seat. Stacy turned on the car, and before she put it in gear, she reached over into the glove box and pulled out her dad's gun and placed it in between her legs. I really couldn't believe how little Stacy trusted this girl, especially because she didn't even know her. I looked over at Stacy in complete disbelief, and she didn't even seem to care in the slightest. Stacy then put the car in reverse, and we backed out of the driveway. Driving down the street, I was watching Stella in the side mirror and Stacy with my left eye. I kept telling myself in my head as if I was praying aloud to just please let us get through this ride without one of them doing something stupid. As we headed down the road, I could see Stella was just looking out the window, taking in the surroundings, while Stacy didn't take her eyes off the rear view for even a second. After several minutes of driving, I knew we were getting close to downtown, so I told Stella to lay down in the back seat, as it was only about another minute or two before we got to the general store, and then we would be one step closer to being done with all of this. As we pulled up to the general store, Stacy parked to the side of the building, and it was early enough in the day that it was past the lunch hour or lunch rush, but before the dinner one, so we should be able to avoid the food crowds. Once we parked, I completely facing forward spoke, "Okay, so here's the plan. Stacy and I are going to go inside and get some food. While we're inside, Stella, you're going to wait a minute before you lift your head up to see if anyone's around. When you think it's safe, go behind the building and wait for me there. I will come back there when everything is good, and we will make our next move. Does everyone understand what we're doing?"
Yeah, let's get this over with.
Stacy and I began to exit the car. Looking at our surroundings and making sure there wasn't a cop in sight, I closed the door, but before Stacy closed hers, she whispered to Stella,
Don't even think of pulling any shit. I got something right here, and I'll put you down myself.
Stacy flashed her gun towards Stella as she tucked it in her waistband of her jeans. I couldn't believe how immature Stacy was acting, and it started to really bother me. Stacy shut her car door and we began walking into the general store. Once we got inside, I could hear the TV on in the background and Pete was sweeping around by the drinks. We walked over to catch his attention and he spoke, "Hey, pretty ladies, how's it going?" "We're doing good, Pete. How's everything with you?" "Well, I'm not sure, but I'm thinking you have something that you want to tell me." "What makes you say that?" "Well, that Stronzo Hunt came in here earlier looking for someone, and he was wondering if I had seen her." "Well, who was he looking for?" "He was looking for Stella." "Stella? She's at the hospital, isn't she? I just saw her yesterday." "Ah, I thought she was there too, but apparently she is not. They think Betty might have had something to do with it, and she is being questioned by the police down the road. I saw you earlier today with Betty, so I thought maybe you knew something about it." "No, I had no idea. Betty was just catching up with me since I was visiting, and we had breakfast and she dropped me off." "Well, I do hope Stella is alright and safe." I think she'll be okay. Listen, Pete, can we get a few sandwiches to go? Ovviamente." Pete headed back behind the counter and into the back of the store. Stacy and I walked over to pick out some drinks, and I had to ask her, "What's with the gun, Stacy?"
Listen, you haven't seen the shit I've seen. I'm only trying to protect us. You don't even know this. You don't know this girl for shit. You can call me paranoid, but until you go to sleep at night with the fear that you may be killed at any moment, then don't give me shit about protecting myself. You find yourself laying down at night and terrorists putting their kids to the task of placing explosives under your combat boots or outside of your dwelling. Everyone is suspicious in my eyes. I can't walk around like you, oblivious to the true nature of people, because that's how you lose the ones you love. Told you earlier that I'm not going to lose you. You really need to take a hard look at yourself, Gwen, because you are your own worst enemy. Life could be so simple if you just take a step back and realize you're putting yourself in these situations. You're the one that ran away. You're the one who picked up the psycho and are hiding out from the cops. You're also the one.
I'm sure I was the one that asked to be fucking mouth raped too, didn't I?
Mouth rape? What the fuck are you talking about?
Nothing. Just drop it.
No, you opened this can of worms. Now what are you talking about?
Nothing, Stacy. Just fucking drop it. I couldn't hold back from the tears swelling up in my eyes, but the fact that Stacy was putting all this blame on me was beginning to piss me off. No one, no matter what they do in life, deserves what happened to me. I didn't even want to bring it up, but Stacy just tripped my trigger, and with everything she was just saying to me, I scuffed her off, wiping the tears from my eyes, and waited by the counter for Pete to bring us the food. There was too much at stake right now to dive into this conversation with her, and I needed to focus. I tried to just focus on the way that I could get Pete to come around back and see Stella. I looked over at the condiment table and saw some napkins. I figured I could probably write down a meet me out back and pass it off to him with the money for the sandwiches. So I walked over to the table with Stacy trailing behind me and said, "Do you have a pen?"
Gwen, what were you talking about back there?
Stacy, just drop it. Do you have a pen?
No, but there's one on the counter over there.
I walked back to the main counter with the napkin in hand and wrote for Pete to meet me out back. I placed the pen back down and waited anxiously for Pete to come back with the food. It was only about another few minutes before Pete walked out with the 2 wrapped sandwiches in hand. He placed them both on the counter and began to ring them up. I reached my pocket and pulled out a $20 bill and handed it to Pete with the note. As he took them from me, he had confusion in his eyes, wondering why I handed a napkin. But then he turned it over and he read my note. He looked up at me, and I gave him a nod, letting me know that note was for him. With a smile appearing on his face, he said, "You girls didn't say what type of sandwich you wanted, but I made my favorite, roast beef and Swiss, with all the fixes. I hope that's okay." "Everything you make is amazing, Pete. I'm sure it'll be great." "Ah, grazie, bella ragazza." Pete handed me back my change for the sandwiches and smiled at us and headed towards the back of the store. I started walking to the front with Stacy to get out to her car. When we got to the car, I handed Stacy one of the sandwiches, but she refused to take it.
That's her. I'm sure she needs it. I'll just eat at home.
"Do you have a pen in your car?"
Yeah, I'm sure I have something. Why?
"I need you to write down your phone number so we can get in contact with you and let you know where I'm at. I can try to give you the number of the room so you can call Betty." Stacy opened her door and started rustling around on the center console until she came across something. She lifted herself up in the car, walked up to me, and said,
I'll have the black marker.
"That's fine. Just give me your number right here on my hand." I placed my hand out to Stacy and she began to write her number on the palm of my hand. At the end of the number, she drew a little heart and then gave me a small kiss. She lifted her head up, capped the marker, and as I looked at the number trying to quickly memorize it so should it get washed off somehow, Stacy seemed like she was sad all of a sudden. And as she quickly pulled me in for a hug, she whispered in my ear and said,
Please be safe, Gwen, and call me as soon as you can. I am sorry if I hurt you.
"It's fine, Stacy, but I have to go. I'll call you later." Stacy gave me a kiss on the cheek and I headed to the back of the store. As I walked around the back, I could hear Pete from the inside telling his coworker that he was going on break and be back shortly. The back of the store wasn't very big, and there were some woodlands shortly in the distance. It looked like it was only used as a place primarily for drop-offs and garbage. Stella was standing near one of the dumpsters, staring straight over at me. No sooner did we make eye contact did the back door of the general store open up and Pete stepped outside. I walked up to Pete while he was lighting up a cigarette and he said, "So, what was the note all about?" I pointed over the dumpster where Stella was standing and staring at Pete. The newly lit cigarette fell from his mouth and the look on his face was as if he'd just seen a ghost. He muttered something under his breath in Italian and the tears filled his eyes. He slowly began to walk towards Stella with extreme caution. It was the strangest thing to see someone so jovial sink into his repressed feelings. "Il mio tesoro? Is that really you?"
I'm sorry, I don't know what you're saying.
"You never really did. My God, what happened to you?" Pete chuckled a little bit while wiping the tears from his eyes.
I don't know. I can barely remember anything.
"Do you remember me?" "She said your name yesterday when I talked about the store." "Of course you remember your Uncle Pete."
You're my family?
"Well, in a sense. You don't remember your nonna came here from the same sunny peninsula as mine?"
I'm sorry, I don't remember.
"What happened to you up there?"
I'm not really sure. I'm trying to remember my life before the hospital, but it's slowly coming back to me.
Hmm. Well, I know what to fix you up. Gwen, give her one of the sandwiches you got there. One bite of my food and I make you remember. It's the best sandwich in all of New York. I handed Stella the food, but she didn't seem that interested in eating it. She held the sandwich in her hands, but made no effort to indulge in it whatsoever. I walked up to Stella and said, "Listen, the food's amazing, Stella. You should try it."
I'm sorry. I'm just not hungry right now. I'm sure you're right. I look forward to eating it later.
That's okay. I know you will like it. And when I see you again, you can tell me all about it. Where do you girls plan on going? You know the cops will be looking everywhere for her. Well, yeah, that's what I want to talk to you about, Pete. The only option we could see right now is getting us to the motel down the road. I brought Stella here so you could see that she was okay and see if there's anything that you could do for us since you knew her so well. Well, the motel might be a little tricky. I wish I could let you stay here, but I can't afford to get in trouble with the law. What I will do is give you a few things to get you girls set up. Then, once you're settled, you can call me here at the store and we use a code word in case I can't talk, or maybe if someone's listening. Pete reached into his apron and pulled out a wad of cash. He handed the money to Stella, and as she reached out with her arms to grab it, Pete noticed the scars all over. Completely shocked, he said, "Dio mio! What happened to you?"
I don't know. I've been wondering that myself, and I'm just trying to put all the pieces back together.
"I can't let you walk around like this. Here, take this." Pete took off his black tracksuit top that he was wearing over his apron and wrapped it around Stella like a shawl. The jacket was almost like a blanket on Stella because Pete was so much bigger than her.
Thank you for this.
You never need to thank me, Stella. Siamo una famiglia. Pete walked up to Stella and gave her a very loving hug. Stella didn't object to it at all as she embraced Pete back. As Pete pulled himself away slightly with his arm still around her, he slowly placed a kiss on the top of her forehead and said, "Ti amo, tesoro mio." What does that mean, Pete? Tesoro? When Stella remembers, she will tell you. Pete broke his embrace with Stella, walked up to me and said, "Use the money I gave you to get a room, and don't worry about food. I will stop by and give you girls whatever you need. Once you get settled, call the store and tell whoever answers that you want an eggplant parmesan on a rye. That'll be the code word, so we know who'll be calling." Well, what if someone calls and actually orders that, Pete? I don't have rye bread, so it's not possible. Thank you so much, Pete. You've been a big help. It's never a problem, please. Just make sure you call so I know you two are alright. I promise we will. One last thing, Miss Gwen. Sure, what's up? Que Dio ti bendiga e vige sempre su te. What does that mean, Pete? It's just a little prayer so God may watch over you. Thanks, Pete. Pete walked back over to Stella and took a necklace off that he was wearing and placed it over Stella's head. The necklace was of a little silver circle with a picture of a saint on it. Pete then made the sign of the cross in front of Stella, kissed the necklace, and just gave it to her. "This is Saint Peter. He is my family's patron saint. May he always watch over you and give you protection."
Thank you.
Pete walked back over from us and headed towards the back door of the store. As he opened the door, he looked back at us, made the signal near his face for him to call us, and I nodded back to him with reassurance, and he walked inside. Now, the plan was to get us to this motel, which is easier said than done. We would have to walk again, although it wasn't as far as our previous adventure, still running the risk of being spotted. I reached down into my bag and grabbed out my vodka and took a few swigs of it. I then placed my sandwich into the backpack and took Stella's and put it in as well. Once I was done taking a swig, I handed the bottle over to Stella and said, "You might want to take a drink. You might want to drink this a bit as we have a little walk ahead of us. The motel's about a mile and a half from here on the edge of town. Fortunately, we're going to have to be quick about it so we don't get seen. Take the hood and the jacket Pete just gave you and put it over you, and that way it'll be harder to recognize you." Stella took the bottle from me and took a few swigs and then handed it back to me. When she was finished, I placed it into my bag and zipped it up. Placing the backpack over my shoulders as Stella pulled the hood over her head, I knew it was time for us to head out. We began walking back around the shop and onto the main strip of downtown Reidsville. I reached out for Stella and took her hand so that she would stay pace with me, and I wouldn't have to wonder if she was keeping up. Holding hands and watching every move we did, we started our journey to the Reidsville Motel. Luckily for us, there was not too many people on the roadway. I didn't see any cops walking around. Stella was keeping up with me, and we didn't seem to be encountering any sort of problem. I figured at the pace we were moving, we'd probably be there in less than 10 minutes. The best course of action would be to leave Stella near the motel while I checked in, as I'm sure they would have cameras inside. This wasn't my first time checking into a motel under a false name, and the motel, from what I can remember, shouldn't make me put a card to file to check in. The key throughout my history was finding the swanky hotels and motels because they asked the least number of questions when checking in. There were plenty of times I stayed in places that had marks on the door from the police that would bust in them. And being around prostitutes and people using their rooms to cheat on their spouses was such a common thing for me to see. There was one time a few years back that I had met a prostitute by the name of Shelley, and she would be a frequent at one of the motels that I would stay in. It was the primary place that she would go to offer her services. She would hang out on the corner of the motel and find men who would be interested in her before taking them back to the room she was occupying. She must have had some sort of a standing deal with the owner, because she stayed in that room and also used it as her home. The owner knew what she was doing, but still allowed her to do so. I guess as long as he was making money, he didn't care what went on behind closed doors. One night, when I came to the motel completely hammered, I couldn't even make it in the door to my room. Shelley came over and brought me inside. While I was sleeping, she cleaned me up and left some water on the nightstand beside me. When I woke up, I figured maybe I'd been robbed or even raped, but all the money was there, and nothing fell off. When I walked outside, I saw Shelley standing there as if she was just waiting for me. She told me that I had passed out and that she brought me in so I wouldn't get hurt. This was a complete stranger who took care of me for no reason other than just being a decent human being. I learned that while living on the road, that you have to rely on the kindness of strangers. It seemed like the people who were the least likely to offer you help were actually the ones that helped the most. The people with the money would see you sitting on the street and give you cash and make a snide remark about go get a job, or, the things that I hated the worst were the kids who would sit there and the kids that would approach me. When kids my age came up to me, they would give me a few dollars but would have their phones out recording the whole thing as if they were doing it out of some kindness of their hearts, but they were selling it to social media to float their ego. It was truly disgusting the way the generation behaved. But as long as they gave me money, what did I really care who they were impressing? I didn't do the social media thing or even understand the concept of it. Why would I care that someone I hadn't seen in 10 years bought a new shirt? It just seemed to breed narcissists, in my opinion. Shelley wasn't one of those people, and we actually became friends after that night. We remained friends who would talk the way neighbors would when we would see each other. We would swap stories or even a few times share a drink. We remained this way until one night she was busted by the police for prostitution, and then I never saw Shelley again. I think about her from time to time, and I always remember what she told me that night. Strangers are just friends that you haven't met yet. I kept that saying close to me, and maybe that's why I felt so eager to put myself in a situation with Stella. Maybe I could pay it forward for some of the good things that happened to me in my life. As the motel appeared in the distance, I knew we'd finally made it. As we kept walking, I told Stella, okay, you see the motel up there? When we get there, you wait around the side of the building while I go inside and get us checked in. When I come back out with a room key, then you can follow me into the room. Should only be a few minutes, but if you see any cops, come try and head back to the general store. That'll be our rendezvous point if we get in trouble.
Okay.
As we approached the motel, it seemed a lot less elegant than I had remembered from driving past when I was younger. It wasn't as swanky as most of the places I would frequent, but also wasn't anything that could even have an average star rating. I thought to myself, this should work out just fine. Stella walked over to the side of the building and leaned against the wall, keeping her eyes on the road, and then I started to walk in the building. When I walked inside, the disgusting smell of cat piss overcame me. There were several cats walking around the lobby and meowing at each other. They must have had a litter box nearby, or they were simply just pissing on the floor because the smell was so horrid and overwhelming. I started to second guess us staying here, but before I could turn around and walk outside, the older man approached the counter. The man looked like he was in his 50s and he was very unkempt. He had food stains all over his shirt and he was holding a half-eaten hot dog in his hand. I couldn't help but notice he had a great deal of mustard on top of that hot dog spilling onto the floor beside him. Repulsed by his overall appearance and lack of common decency, I worked with the nerve and said, I need a room for the night, maybe a few days to follow. The man turned around and grabbed a sign-in sheet and placed it on the counter in front of me and dropped a pen on top of it. He began stuffing his face again with the condiments spilling all over his shirt. I looked down at the paper and it was just a basic form asking for my personal info. Pulled out my fake ID from my pocket and began copying the info. The room rate for a single night was only $35, and I knew I had some money left over that should cover that. When I was done filling out the info, I pushed the card and pen back towards the man. With a mouthful half of food, he said, Let me see your ID. I slid the ID towards him, and he took it in the back room with the form I had just filled out. I tried my best to stay as patient as possible, while dodging cats trying to rub themselves all over my legs. I could hear what sounded like a copy machine going off in the background, so I assumed that he was probably making a copy of my ID. This wasn't something unusual, so I didn't think anything of it. When he was finished, he walked down and said, It's $35. As I reached in my pocket to pull out the money, I realized that it only had $30 left. I was going to be a little short on the money, and I had to think quick on my feet. I only have 30 at the moment, but I can get you more later if that's okay. Sign says 35 for a night. You don't have the money, you can't stay here. Wait. My girlfriend's going to come by later. She can give you the money then. I'll probably be staying here for a few days, and I'll get you a little extra for spotting me. My girlfriend, huh? Yeah, she's going to be here in a few hours. What kind of things you, girls getting into over there? I could tell this disgusting man was trying his best to charm and get lucky for... Oh, this man was trying to put on his best charm. And luckily for me, I was used to being treated this way by men. I knew exactly how to handle the situation in order to get my way. I leaned a little over the counter so my loose-fitting t-shirt would fall slightly enough to give this man an aerial view of the tops of my breasts. Leaning in and seeing his eyes staring down my shirt, I seductively said, Well, you like to get into all sorts of things. Is that so? Yeah. So you think I can get those keys so I could freshen up for her? The hotel manager turned around and grabbed an old set of keys with the rim number 12 on them and teasingly handed them over to the counter to me. I took the keys from his hand and gave him a little wink as I seductively walked towards the front door. I knew there was 100% certainty that he would be staring at my ass like I was some piece of meat. Sure enough, as I went to push open the door, I could see his eyes focused on my backside, so I blew him a little kiss and walked out the door. Once I was outside, I chuckled to myself because most men were so easy to manipulate. They only had one thing on their mind at all times, and know how ugly and disgusting they were? If you were even a slight bit attractive, you could use your sexuality to twist and turn them any way you pleased. Unfortunately, I learned that from a very young age, and my mom always said something to me that made sense to me as I got older. She told me that in this world, men may think that they're their head over everything, but it's the woman who's the neck, and that they can turn their head any way they please. No truer words have ever been spoken, as I just proved that theory correct with this guy. The rooms were all numbered in a row, with 2 floors with a deck going all around them. I walked up to Stella, and our room was conveniently close enough to where she was standing, and I could see her just peering at me from around the corner. So I lifted the keys, had a little jingle in the air, and gave them a jingle. I could see a little smile appear on her face, which is something I really hadn't come to see from her. She really had a pretty smile, and I thought to myself she should really do it more often. As I counted up the numbers posted on each door, we finally got to our room. The green painted door with the gold number 12 on it was the culmination of the whole thrown together plan from this morning finally coming to fruition. I placed the key into the old door, turned the knob, and we walked inside. So that's chapter 9. And, there's not a whole lot of Easter eggs in this. I really only have one from the entire thing. And that's just the number 12 was my soccer number. So you'll see the number 12 used in a lot of different things. It's still my favorite number and everything as well. So, but that's really the only Easter egg-wise that I could really get into. Now, you're going to hear in this book, especially the third book too, you're going to hear the word tesoro tossed around a lot when Pete is referring to Stella. And we don't actually get into the meaning behind it. I mean, you could obviously Google it and stuff like that and realize like it's a deep term of endearment from an Italian perspective. But we don't really dive into why Pete calls her that or anything. Because, I mean, in the first book, you only see Pete and her communicate very briefly, like one time. But other than that, it's not really mentioned again. So in this book, we will find out a little bit more their relationship, why Pete has an attachment to her and stuff like that, and especially in book 3, it really, really dives into that aspect of it. I actually was writing again today. I did another 12 pages in Coincidentally, chapter 9. I got about another 8 to 10 pages to go before I am almost halfway done with the book. I believe I'm just at about the 200 page mark at this point. And coincidentally, too, as funny as it is, that I'm working on chapter 9, and in chapter 9, you actually get the reasoning where Tesoro came from and why Pete started calling Stella that. And you also learn about the dynamic of their relationship and how it came to be in the first place through a flashback. So, a little teaser right there as far as what's going on in the story that I'm currently writing. With that being said, the next time we're going to meet is next Tuesday. We're going to do object permanence. We talked about it a little bit. We're going to dive deeper into that, especially from like the borderline standpoint, and talk about all that for our Tuesday night healing. And I know we haven't done that in a very long time, so it's going to be good to dive back into that and get that done. Then, next Thursday, we're going to do chapter 10, which is Pinky Promise. That in itself has a lot of Easter eggs in it, so that's something to look forward to. I mean, the title in itself was named Pinky Promise not only because of what happens in the chapter, but because that's always been a big thing with me and my daughter. And in this book, there's a lot of nods to her, especially as we get into the later part of the book. So, when they come up, it'll be nice to, let you guys see how that manifested itself. At that point, when we get to the end of next week, I'm going to release the schedule for the next upcoming things. I know our next healing after that is going to be about emotional wellness. I would like to do it sooner because, everything that was going on with me over the last few weeks and stuff like that, I figured it would be appropriate to definitely dive into that. So, from different perspectives, maybe we'll get a few people to join in, see what's going on, talk about different perspectives of how they handle their own emotional wellness, and what are keys to helping other people who don't realize that they need emotional wellness to get them there, to push them over that hump. I know Stormy has made a habit of that over the last 5 or 6 years of pushing me over that hump when I wasn't doing emotionally well, so I'm sure she has plenty to say in that regard. So with that being said, I don't really have anything else for tonight. Thank you guys for all the understanding and stuff like that while I was getting my shit together over the last 2 weeks. And, what I learned from the experience that I want to push on to everybody is that, I was always raised when it came to my dad and stuff like that to kind of overlook the things that were going on in my head, to kind of overlook the feelings that I was like feeling and stuff like that, and basically just get hit with that typical be a man and just suck it up shit. But at the cost of what? I kept thinking to myself and I kept rationalizing into it, and each week it kept getting progressively worse and worse, and I could feel like something wasn't right. And each day that I was getting my ass kicked at work, I just knew what was going on, and I just kept telling myself, I kept hearing his voice in my head, just suck it up, just suck it up, just suck it up. And I'm just thinking to myself, for what? What am I sucking it up for? I'm not doing anything proactive for myself by continuously irritating what's going on in my head and stressing myself out and not sleeping much and overworking and just not having any assistance whatsoever, when assistance could be easily given. But for whatever reason, my boss decided that he didn't want to do that. He thought it would just be easier to sit in his chair and watch me struggle to do, this time of the year. And doing the job for 3 people, especially with the customers just a line out the door for 12 full hours every day, it's more than anyone should have to handle, And like I said, I try to just put on a brave face and deal with it and stuff like that. But I kept thinking to myself, at the cost of what? I'm doing it for a boss who doesn't give a shit about me, for an organization who doesn't give a shit about me and is notoriously known for treating their employees badly. Why? I'm putting at risk me being a father to my kid because I'm exhausted when she comes over and I just want to sleep, to, not being a good friend, to not being able to put out the information to you guys and stuff like that, and essentially being a hypocrite because you're sitting there and trying to preach this emotional wellness and getting help for things and stuff like that, and you're not doing it. You're not going and getting it done yourself. So it's just hypocritical. So I said, you know what, enough is enough. finally it just hit me really heavy the Monday before I actually started to go out on that Friday, and it wasn't good. I mean, even once I went to the doctor and stuff like that, they wanted to put me out for a whole month on FMLA, and I told them, I was like, I can't be out that long. It's not going to make anything better. Maybe like a week, that'll be fine. But they wanted two at least, so we did that, and I got my house in order. I got everything that I needed, and it was nice to, be brought back to all that and stuff like that, and to have that, that that mental wellness right there. It was just good to get back in line with that. And when I returned today and stuff like that, it was nice to finally just ease back into all that. And it was a good day to come back. There was no issues. It was drastically different than when I left. And, the time away helped. It helped with a lot of things. And, I got a lot of things done around the house and, stuff like that. So it was good to take the time. So, the point of my rambling right there was just to say, it's not your job that's going to remember in 20 years that you didn't take a sick day. But your kids will. Your family will. They're the ones that are going to remember that you gave up time with them to, go to work, to do this, to go that extra mile and stuff like that for ultimately something that's not going to be there for your whole life. Eventually you're going to retire. Eventually you're going to leave, whatever the case may be. Spend time with the ones that you love. Don't take for granted the people in your life that are there for you and want to see you succeed, and just really, 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 prioritize what's actually important in your life. You could always accumulate more sick days. You could always accumulate more time off. You can always make more money. But you can't get back that time. You can't get back that time that you're wasting away if you're not emotionally well. So, just really take into consideration those of you that are struggling or anything like that, and just, get your priorities straight, and do not take your physical or mental health for granted. Because you want to be here for the long run. We all want you here for the long run. We all want to work together and do this together. So, just be there for one another like we're here for you. Anyone that's in crisis, you're certainly welcome to reach out to either myself or Stormy. We can try to help you the best that we can. It has been a while since we've had communication and stuff like that, just because of everything that was going on with me. But we are here for you, so feel free to reach out. So I will see you guys again on Tuesday for our object constancy. And Stormy, did you want to say goodnight?
Good night, everyone.
Yeah. Good night, everybody. I hope you all have a good weekend, and we will see you again on Tuesday.